You're watching HuffPost Live. I'm Abby Huntsman. Is cigarette stigma all up in smoke? For the first time since 1971, when cigarette ads were banned, e-cigarette marketing is on the airwaves and looking sexier than ever. It's no surprise then that tobacco revenue is at record highs. Take a look at this ad, for example.
-1, I'm tired of being a walking ashtray. -2, I'm tired of feeling guilty every time I want to light up. I'm Stephen Dorff. I've been a smoker for 20 years. And I just found the smarter alternative. Blue Ecigs. Blue lets me enjoy smoking without it affecting the people around me. Because it's vapor, not tobacco smoke. That means no ash. And best of all, no offensive odor. With Blue, you can smoke at a basketball game if you want to. And how about not having to go outside every 10 minutes when you're in a bar with your friends? The point is, you can smoke Blue virtually anywhere. We're all adults here. It's time we take our freedom back. Come on, guys. Rise from the ashes.
Should anti-smoking campaigners fear that this rapid growth of e-cigarettes could undermine years of successful anti-smoking efforts? Here to discuss this with me, I'm joined on set by Chris Mathias. He's the HuffPost New York Associate Editor and a smoker himself. In the Google Hangout, we have Dr. David Abrams, Executive Director of the Shridu Institute for Tobacco Research and Policy Studies at Legacy, Dr. Staten Glantz, Director at the Center for Tobacco Control Research and Education, and Jason Healy, founder of Blue e-cigarettes. So I want to first point out before we start the discussion that in fiscal year 2013, the states will collect $25.7 billion in revenue from the tobacco settlement and tobacco taxes, but will spend only 1.8% of it. So that's $459.5 million on programs to prevent kids from smoking and help smokers quit. So David, with these statistics I just threw out there, obviously we've seen a huge decrease in spending for these anti-smoking campaigns. How has this impacted people smoking overall? I'm assuming maybe we've seen an increase in smoking.
Well, certainly two things. One is we're very concerned about youth and young adults starting to smoke or being tempted to smoke with a variety of starter and tempting products and then becoming addicted to the most lethal form of smoking, which is the combustible cigarette. And secondly, this is a public health disaster and emergency in the sense that cigarettes still kill between 1 in 2 and 1 in 3 people who smoke them and could prevent over 430,000 deaths per year if nobody smoked tobacco products. So it's a huge impact when the rates of smoking are slowing or stalling. And in terms of prevalence, when we want to see them go down the way they have in the last 50 years.
Because, David, it seemed like for a while, every time I turned on the TV, I would see these horrifying ads, but they were anti-smoking ads that obviously were effective, but they were hard to watch. And I can't remember the last time I've actually seen one of those on TV.
That's right. But more recently, the CDC and the FDA did put on a series of ads that were incredibly successful, leading to a doubling of the calling of the quit lines, some of which are funded by tobacco settlement money and provide people easy access to evidence-based cessation treatment. So some of the mass media is very successful if it's adequately funded and continuously funded. That would apply both to youth prevention and adult cessation.
Well, I want to bring in Jason, who seems to be enjoying one of his own e-cigarettes. How are these cigarettes different than just a regular cigarette?
Well, they're dramatically different in the way that you guys were talking about. There's no combustion and there's no burning of tobacco, which I think everyone will acknowledge is where the nasty stuff starts to happen. And it takes a nicotine solution or a solution without nicotine and vaporizes it and allows you to inhale and exhale vapor rather than burning tobacco.
And I mean, it just really came about in 2007, so really there hasn't been any research that's been done, at least enough to know any of the effects that it could potentially have longer term.
Well, I wouldn't say no research. The anti-side would love you to think that there's been no research, but there has been some, and we need to do more. But I think, based on the fact that we've removed combustion, it shows it has legs, and people should be looking to encourage the research and help that. And I think, when everything comes out in the wash, you'll see that it's quite a positive product for smokers, because despite what everyone says, the quit or die model isn't working.
So do you still have to be 18 to smoke e-cigarettes?
Yeah, it's whatever the legal age to smoke in your state is.
But is there any warning on the box like you would see on cigarettes that this could kill you?
No, because the FDA hasn't determined that that's accurate. We don't have the combustion, and therefore we don't have those rules just yet. We do encourage retailers to card. We list that he must be 18 or at legal age to use the product.
Because I have to admit, I mean, the ad that we just showed, that's a really sexy ad. And, handsome guy, and he makes it look very, very cool. Is there any difference between an advertisement with e-cigarettes than a regular cigarette?
Well, there aren't any TV ads for regular cigarettes anymore, and I think,
But then why is it okay, then, you think, to have ads for e-cigarettes?
Well, because adults have choices, and adults should have the freedom to choose what they want to enjoy, and that's what our product is aimed at. There's, the great thing about this product is that's the 35 to 55 smokers that are picking up this product that can't quit or don't want to, and they're the one that it's attractive to, and they find it sexy and appealing, and that's a good thing.
Speaking of those that have a hard time quitting, I want to bring Jason in as well, who is nice enough to come on and admit that he enjoys smoking. Sorry, Chris. Sorry. Okay. I want to read a comment that just came in. This is from Zanique, who says, "Smoking is not sexy. Smoking is disgusting. It makes your clothes, hair, hands, and breath smell awful. It poisons your body and can harm those around you that have to breathe in your leftovers. I've smoked for 8 years and haven't been able to successfully quit yet. Fail." Do you feel like Zanique does, that you want to quit but you can't, or is smoking something that you don't really look at as being such a bad thing?
There's that famous Mark Twain quote. It goes something like, smoking or quitting smoking is easy. I've done it thousands of times. And I think I'm kind of the same way. Sometimes I'll take a little break, but for the most part, I enjoy smoking. It's a part of my everyday routine. And I enjoy it with my coffee in the morning, when I go to bed at night. And I think the most addictive part of it.
So you have it from when you wake up to when you go to bed?
Yes, yes.
So how many would you have a day?
I smoke about a pack a day, yeah.
I want to pull up, this is a clip, I'm sure most of you have seen Mad Men, but I want to make sure that I reference it. It's from an online social network called World, and we can play this while I'm talking to you, but I'm a huge fan of Mad Men. They've done a great job of showing smoking and really depicting in the way that it was used back in the day. It's at all times of the day, and it looks really sexy.
It looks great.
When you watch, shows like Mad Men, does it make you feel better about the fact that you smoke?
I don't know if it makes me feel better. I don't feel great about the fact that I smoke, although I do enjoy it. I think something that maybe Mad Men shows is just kind of like the social foil that cigarette can provide. Like if you're at a party, if you want to talk to someone, if you want to step outside, if I'm standing outside smoking a cigarette, it's more likely that someone's going to come up and talk to me and have a random conversation. I think it provides like a really nice foil to meet people. If I'm at a party and I want to talk to someone, I might light their cigarette, might ask them to step outside and have a cigarette with me. And I think that's a large part of what you see.
So you might lose friends if you stop smoking.
It's totally possible.
I don't smoke, and I don't have a whole lot of friends, so maybe I should.
Yeah, you should really pick it up. It's great.
Stan, I want to bring you in, though. I mean, all the research that's been done, we know that it's harmful to so many people. Like we said, it kills so many people every year, every day, in fact. And people know these facts, such as Chris, but why do people still do it?
Well, the tobacco companies are the world's best marketers, and they addict kids when they're 12 to 15 years old for the most part. The relaxation that Chris feels when he smokes is actually treatment of nicotine withdrawal syndrome, and the tobacco companies have massive amounts of money to spend on marketing. They're not allowed on television, but they're still everywhere else imaginable. My objection to the e-cigarette claims is that there's really no science at all by independent sources to back up the claims that they're not dangerous. They deliver nicotine. It's an addictive drug. They're being used and promoted in places like shopping malls where they're easily accessible to youth. And we just don't know what, how they're going to end up being used in conjunction with cigarettes. It's looking like there's going to be a lot of what's called dual use, where people use the e-cigarettes when they can't smoke conventional cigarettes and then go back to conventional cigarettes, which are much more efficient at delivering nicotine in a way which gives you the maximum addictive hit. My current position on e-cigarettes, absent the kind of research we need, is first of all, they should not be allowed to be marketed on television where kids see them. They should not be allowed to be used indoors in any place where smoking of conventional cigarettes is prohibited, and they should not be.
I'm sure that Jason would make the argument that if you can't smell it, if it doesn't affect those around you, there's no reason why you can't smoke inside.
Well, except that's not, he might say that, but it's not true. I mean, I've been around people using e-cigarettes, and you can smell it. And there has been research done where people have measured carcinogens and other toxic chemicals in the e-cigarette exhaust. If you look at the vapor coming out of his mouth, when he's been smoking it, it's colored. That means there's particulate matter reflecting the light coming out as he exhales it. And there are a couple of independent studies that have been done have found several carcinogenic chemicals and other toxins present. Now, they're at lower levels than in conventional cigarette smoke, but if you look at them as in terms of normal air pollution standards, they're still quite substantial.
So is it okay then to show these ads as technicality, or is there a moral issue at stake here that needs to be discussed? I'll give that one to you, Jason.
Well, you know, I think back to the argument that he just brought up, you know, the anti-side would have us jump from a ship, or stay on a ship that is definitely sinking and very quickly, but don't get into that life raft that might have a slight little leak that we can fix. And from a moral standpoint, you know, we've got to realize quit or die doesn't work. It hasn't worked. So we've got to find alternatives, and at the moment, e-cigs are the best alternative. If what they're saying is true about the nicotine being so addictive, then why aren't we seeing people addicted to the gums and patches? They're not. It's the whole habitual side of it that e-cigs answer as well. And the tests are being done, and what information we have now is positive. And I think you'll see it get even more positive in the future.
So, Chris, while Jason makes a point that this could also help smokers quit, it gives them another way to smoke, but not, you know, actually smoke a real cigarette. You could also make the argument that it could promote smoking. I guess I'll ask Chris, but sorry, the names are a little bit all screwed up. I'm sorry.
No,
okay, well.
No, I mean, feel free to jump in, guys, on this question, because I mean, I feel like this is the real debate here. I mean, you're advertising it, Jason, as such that could help people quit smoking, but you could make the same argument, the same opposite argument, rather.
Well, you could, yeah. But you got to fight different battles here. I mean, you're talking, you want to put out that 400,000 a year dying from it. You're going to help them, or are you going to say there's a slight small percentage that someone else might pick up an e-cig and smoke? I'd rather help the majority and then work on other ways while you're doing that to ensure that it's used responsibly, it's only used by smokers. To say, hey, here's something that could work, is working for people, but you know what, I'm going to just ban it altogether and I'm going to let them die because there's a slight chance someone might. No evidence shown by the fact that people are doing that, but because there's a slight chance, let's just ban it.
David, what's your take on this?
I think there are a number of myths and misleading statements here. I agree with Dr. Glantz that we simply don't have the evidence, number one. Number two, there are absolutely no rigorous, properly conducted, large-scale randomized trials showing that e-cigarettes are effective or superior to any form of nicotine replacement therapy or other recommended treatments for smoking cessation. So until that evidence is out there and accepted by normal scientific standards, there is absolutely no justification for claiming that e-cigarettes will help you quit smoking and might be better than the current forms of nicotine replacement therapy. Nicotine replacement therapy is much less addictive because it is a slow absorption and it takes the edge off your craving and your blood nicotine level, while allowing you, therefore, to have the strength and the ability to resist temptation and quit. There is great concern that e-cigarettes could be used as starter products by kids and young adults, which are a target audience. We did a national representative survey that suggested that more young people are aware of and have tried e-cigarettes than older people. So the evidence is still not there. And it is probably true that e-cigarettes, because they're non-combustible, will be safer form of nicotine delivery than the most lethal combusted cigarette. However, the research hasn't been done. And what I've said is, if they are a truly reduced harm product, then you have to show three things. One, they're not used as a starter product by kids that then seduce them into smoking more dangerous and more satisfying combusted cigarettes, which are highly addictive. Number two, that they truly will be used in a way where the person using them does not dual use them to bridge their craving when they can't smoke, and therefore it might undermine their motivation to quit. In other words, if they're at the work site and they can smoke an e-cigarette because cigarettes are banned, it gets them through the day, and therefore they're less motivated to try to quit combustible use. There is strong evidence that continued use of combusted cigarettes, that there is no safe level. So even if you cut down on combusted use, you are increasing your chances of dying prematurely dramatically. It's the single most dangerous and preventable form of both getting heart disease and dying of a heart attack, or lung cancer, or several other cancers. So until we show that there's a huge public health benefit of these reduced harm products, namely that people switch completely to them and never use a combustible product, rather than bridge use them and delay quitting combustible products, that they are not starter products to attract and seduce a whole new generation of youth into first using these products and then eventually graduating to the most satisfying addictive combusted cigarettes. And C, randomized trials done under proper third-party supervision that demonstrate unequivocally that e-cigarettes are at least as good as and perhaps better than 7 or 8 proven smoking cessation therapeutic aids, including nicotine replacement in various forms, as well as prescription drugs, all of which are proven to double, triple, or quadruple your likelihood of quitting, saving hundreds of lives and billions of dollars.
Right. I want to bring Chris in as well, but first, Jason, I'll let you respond. I want to point out that the FDA has announced that they will, do regulations. I guess how will that affect e-cigarettes overall?
Well, I think in general it'll be positive. As I said in the beginning, yes, more tests have to be done, but it's very easy to hide behind that on the anti-side. It took them decades to do the complete test, and they're still testing today on tobacco cigarettes. So to say, hey, just stop and do the test and make it sound short is inaccurate. And the fact that they keep alluding to there's no studies, that again is wrong and misleading. I definitely agree more tests need to be done, and I think what you'll see with the FDA regulations is that'll start to get sped up. But I do believe from the tests that have been done and the evidence we've seen that they will prove to be a positive alternative or eventually cessation product to cigarettes.
Do you think the ads will remain on the air then?
Yes.
I want to bring...
Well, the ads are going to stay on the air unless the Federal Trade Commission tells them to take them off.
Yeah.
And I think that the ads that are being run right now are intrinsically misleading and contain a lot of statements that are just not supported by the evidence. And I think that it's time for the federal government to get off its duff and do something about it.
Or let people
the claim, and as I said, I think we have thousands of laws here in the United States and elsewhere that do not allow smoking conventional cigarettes indoors. E-cigarettes should definitely, we already know enough to know that e-cigarettes should not be allowed to be smoked indoors, any place that conventional cigarettes are not allowed, because they are putting many of the same chemicals into the air. It's at a lower level, but it's still higher than would be considered in a lot of environmental pollutants. And we need to get the sale of these things out of places like malls, where they're clearly being promoted to kids.
I think it.
Go ahead.
Stan, I think to your argument about banning it indoors, that doesn't sound a little harsh to you? Like, I mean, we walk around the city every day. There's tons of exhaust. There's tons of pollutants everywhere, and we're worried about this tiny little bit of vapor coming out of a e-cigarette.
This is the argument that we heard for years and years and years against conventional cigarettes, and I actually sit on a scientific board that deals with air pollution here in California, and for conventional cigarettes, when you smoke a cigarette indoors, you're actually ending up with air which is much more polluted than it is outdoors. Now, as I said, there's very limited data on the e-cigarettes, but there is some, and they are putting carcinogens into the air, and I don't think one ought to ever be putting toxic chemicals into an indoor environment simply because somebody's having a good time doing it.
To your point, I want to read
at the very least, let them go outside away from other living things to smoke.
I want to read a comment that just came through from I'm Dropping Dimes, who says, many people I see aren't using e-cigs to quit. They are using them because some places allow them to be smoked indoors. Exactly to your point. I'm curious, Chris, as someone that is a smoker, you've never tried e-cigarettes, right?
No, I've never tried e-cigarettes.
Is that something that you would
I think if I were to quit or when I do quit, it would be an attractive option because, as the commercial kind of pointed out, one of the most addictive parts of it is the motion and having something in your hand and being able to step outside somewhere and go through this ritual, which you don't get through gum or from a patch. And I'm actually curious, Jason. I was wondering, were you a conventional smoker before you smoked e-cigs?
About a half a day before starting Blue, and it's been gradual. Now, generally, especially if I have a drink, I'll have a smoke. But on average now, maybe about 2-3 cigarettes, which in August is dramatic.
So you smoke regular cigarettes as well as e-cigarettes, right?
Yeah, just a hell of a lot less.
But see, but I was going to ask you this question, Chris. If you could smoke it inside, wouldn't that just mean you smoke more? When you get outside, you smoke a regular cigarette, and that just allows you to,
keep going.
Do the motion
you
while
find
you're
it
inside,
doesn't,
right? I mean, isn't that something that could happen as well?
Sure. I mean, if I were allowed to smoke inside a lot of places, I would smoke inside. If I could smoke at work, I would smoke inside.
I think there are a lot of people that would say that, but
yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think if I were, there's a chance that I might smoke more. Yeah.
Well, and I want to ask.
Well, e-cigarettes, Blue was bought by Lorillard, which is a cigarette company. And, why is a cigarette company wanting to get into the e-cigarette business? They're not going to do that if they think it's going to adversely affect their cigarette business.
Well, I mean,
eventually, that's why they're getting smart business.
Yeah, exactly. Wouldn't it be a smart business plan to make an option for, an industry that I think is seeing a decline? I work on the New York page here at the Huffington Post, and I know that there's been a 14% decline in smokers in New York since the early aughts, from 2004 to 2011. I think it is a shrinking market, so why not allow this business opportunity? Well,
again, I think the question of exactly what damage e-cigarettes do, as everyone agrees, is still open. But there are some things we know for sure, and one of the things we know is that they're delivering nicotine, which is an addictive drug.
You can get them.
We also know that they're putting pollution into the air, and we know they're being used by a lot of kids. And so I think
a lot of kids. And I'm glad that you brought up.
All you've got to do, if I walk down to the mall.
Well, a kid to you is a 28-year-old.
You see kids walking around with these things, and so they ought to be subjected.
I want to point out an interesting stat, actually. We found that each day more than 3,800 people younger than 18 years of age smoke their first cigarette. And each day about 1,000 people younger than 18 begin smoking on a daily basis. So I want to ask Jason, you know, what is the clientele like? Is it a lot of younger people? How much would it cost, for example, to buy an e-cigarette pack?
Well, it's going to cost you about $80, so there's not too many kids running out with their 12 months worth of pocket money to buy that. To talk about,
it's $80 for one box.
That gets you. You need a starter pack to get started.
So how long does one cigarette last for?
The cigarette itself, well, you only change the cartridge, which is like the butt part of the cigarette. So that's equivalent to about a pack of cigarettes in terms of usage time. But to get started, you need to have a financial investment, which kids aren't doing. And you know,
right.
We see our stats and demographics better than anyone sees, and it's that core market is the 35 plus who are looking for that change, don't necessarily want to quit, can't quit. Either way, they're taking it up.
So I think that the biggest challenge here for the anti-smoking campaigns is not that the younger kids are buying these e-cigarettes, it's that they see these ads now looking very normal and sexy, and they equivalent that to a regular cigarette and think, you know, I forgot that's actually a sexy thing to do. I can smoke a regular cigarette. It's now being shown on TV like it never has before.
I think
if I could just jump in.
Losing argument. People always, when they're losing an argument, throw kids into it because then everyone jumps to their side. We're not seeing kids take up e-cigs. Anything near, you know, we haven't seen any evidence to support that, speaking of misleading data. And, you know, that's just not the case. The market's showing exact opposite.
Well, and I want to read a comment real quick. Hold on, I just want to read a comment real quick that came in from Zanique. She says, my mom got addicted to nicotine gum. She gets more nicotine from the gum than she ever did by smoking. So this whole argument of using e-cigarettes to quit smoking, I mean, once people get addicted, you know, they can use gum. They could use other outlets in which to still get that nicotine.
Yeah, I mean,
if I could just jump in.
Hold on. I'll let Chris go, and then I'll let you jump in.
I think a factor.
This is a thing about.
I think a factor we're forgetting here is that whenever you're quitting smoking, it's always going to involve a certain amount of willpower. There's never gonna be some magic drug that's gonna tell you, you know, that you're gonna be able to quit smoking. I think it's always gonna involve some element of willpower.
Yeah, I think that's exactly, and our comments are blowing us, and a lot of people are writing. One of them, Mike McDonald, says, that's wrong, Jason. You'll take a few new smokers to theoretically save some existing smokers. That's not an acceptable trade-off. The burden of quitting should be on the current smoker, not the would-be smoker. So I'll let you answer that, and I'll give David the last word, but go ahead, Jason.
Well, I think, again, that's flawed reasoning that the quit or die approach hasn't worked. And I think you'll see, if we sit down again in 12 months, there'll be significant tests and data to support what e-cigs, what people believe they're doing and what they're good for. So, you know, I argue that I don't see anyone, and we haven't seen any evidence to support that people are going, hey, I'm going to smoke now, I want a blue. It's just not happening.
Is that because it's too new?
No, it's just not attractive to a non-smoker. You're either, you know, the kids that want to try smoking, and every kid does it, I did it, they want to smoke a cigarette. They don't want to smoke a cigarette that their dad is using to get them off cigarettes. That isn't cool.
Well, I'll let David get the last word here.
There are just so many misleading statements here. We have done 2 national surveys independently replicated, and they're, as far as I know, their CDC has also done one. They all say that young smokers are more likely to be aware of and try e-cigarettes.
What's that mean?
And but the real issue is if you undermine quitting by promoting dual use when you can't smoke, and the advertising for blue is particularly egregious when it comes to that, then you are prolonging a huge public health disaster by dual use under the guise that you are providing a less harmful product that might help you quit when there's absolutely no evidence. So misleading the public and having blood on one's hands is more to the point of e-cigarettes than the false straw man that you raise by saying that we'd rather have people die of continuing to smoke because they can't quit by depriving them of e-cigarettes, which have no randomized clinical trials whatsoever that credibly show that they help you quit or are as good as nicotine replacement therapy. And finally, I want to point out that medicinal nicotine marketed responsibly as a substitute for smoking has been fully tested by the FDA, is safe and effective. And I have absolutely no problem, and nor would many doctors, with a woman or man who permanently uses nicotine gum or nicotine patches for the rest of their lives. It would be far more health beneficial than them smoking cigarettes or dual using e-cigarettes and cigarettes. So there's just a lot of misinformation out there, and we want to make sure that the public are protected.
Well spoken by non-smokers.
And still a lot of information that is yet to be found, and I'm sure that we will follow that in the years to come. I want to end on a comment that someone just said in. Mr. Stoner to you, dude, says, if I could take 6 to 10 gum breaks at work each day, that would be sweet. So I think that's a good way to end this conversation. It's one that really does need to continue because there's still obviously a lot that's unknown about these e-cigarettes. But Jason, thanks for coming on and introducing us to the concept. I've never seen anyone smoke a cigarette that fast, so I really do hope that the end findings end up being better than a lot of people are assuming at this point. But Chris, thanks for being here on set.
Yeah.
And of course, David and Stan, thank you as well for being here. The conversation, of course, will continue here on HuffPost Live. Stay tuned. Alicia Menendez is next.